From the Washington Post, the Pentagon announces a new right-wing press corps after mass walkout. A new crop of conservative media and influencers, including the Gateway Pundit, the Post-Millennial, Human Events, and National Pulse, signed an agreement with the Defense Department. The corporate press staged a walkout of the Pentagon, and I don't believe for a second it had anything to do with the Pentagon's policies. I think it has everything to do with the cult. Apparently, there were reporters who did not care and said, I have no problem signing this. And they were bullied by other media organizations. Threats of being blacklisted, never working in this town again. And a lot of these journalists were like, OK, I'll do whatever you say. That's why they're mad at us. And I can prove it to you. It's actually really simple logic. I'll say this because I won't bury the lead. We applied for a press credential. Thank you and have a nice day. That's it. We've never done any reporting from the Pentagon. We are not an investigative news organization. We are a podcast, news, commentary, and interview show. We do not have journalists meeting with sources in parking garages while they kick over a manila folder with secret documents. We don't do any of that. At most, what we'll do is we'll say, Mr. Secretary, recently there were a drone strike on Venezuelan boats that you said were cartel and drug traffickers. The media is arguing that these were civilians. Can you comment? That's the most that we actually do. That is journalism. It's just not investigative journalism. And they're acting like Timcast getting a press pass so that Elaad can literally just say, Mr. Secretary, care to comment on the recent accusations made by the press so we can suss out some of their thoughts and views on things. They're acting like this is the apocalypse. Take a look at what the Washington Post writes. Nearly 1 week since a rash of Pentagon journalists turned in their press credentials after refusing to sign a new restrictive press policy, the Defense Department, you mean Department of War? Announced a new, okay, hold on a minute. It's the Department of War. They changed the name. You can be mad about it, but they did. They announced a new media press corps largely hailing from right-wing outlets. The 60 people from various news organizations represent a broad spectrum of new media outlets and independent journalists. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell wrote in a statement Wednesday on X, adding that all of the publications agreed to the agency's press policy. According to a draft of the announcement obtained by the Washington Post ahead of Parnell's tweet, the coalition of signatories include the cable news network Real America's Voice, streaming service Lindell TV, the websites The Gateway Pundit, The Post-Millennial, Human Events, The National Pulse, Red State. It includes Turning Point USA's media brand Frontlines, as well as influencer Tim Pool's Timcast, and a Substack-based newsletter called Washington Reporter. The memo said that many independent journalists also signed, but did not specify who they were. The Defense Department's policy blocks journalists from soliciting information the department is not authorized for release, even unclassified details, a major shift in press outreach from the organization. This is a gross exaggeration and manipulation over what is actually going on. Now, I will tell you our statement. You know, there's a bunch of journalists insulting me and ragging on us, and they're crying. Oh, and that shows you one thing. They were never journalists. They are partisan cultists. They are angry that we will not march in lockstep with their cult. This is very simple. We have never been to the Pentagon. I think actually a couple producers. Did you go, Tate? Mm-mm. It was who went? Kellen and Sean. They went recently after an invite over how we could potentially interview people in the Department of War if we were to do a podcast. That was about it. Then all of this happened. That is the extent we've ever been there. Elaad has a White House press credential so that he can go in the press briefing room and the Oval Office when able and ask questions. We are not investigative journalists to a certain degree. Maybe sometimes, Elaad's going to dig into a story he might find some details on, but we don't dedicate our time to trying to uncover malfeasance and untoward behavior from corporations or government as investigators. I applaud all those who do. That work is tremendous. It's important. Fantastic. For what reason is it an affront to anyone that our organization said we would like to attend some press briefings to ask some questions, just like any other journalist who does? They're acting like the fact that we are there is they're insulting us over it. It's inane. And they're acting like something's wrong with journalism in the country because we requested a press pass. Isolate every news organization that they offered this to. First and foremost, the Pentagon offered everyone, every organization was afforded the exact same opportunity with their memorandum. These are just the organizations that looked it over and said, okay, I guess. And you'll notice, one thing you'll notice, it's not so much that they're conservative leaning, independent or otherwise. It's that these are organizations that typically did not get access to these institutions. Now, certainly, I think there are many people who are just going to pony up to Trump no matter what he does, and he's always right and always going to do right. He can never do wrong. I'm not going to play that game. I certainly have no problem criticizing Trump over the Epstein handling, nor Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, despite them being friends of the show. Criticism where criticism is due. I've levied some criticism at a lot of organizations on the right. This memo, we have pulled it up because the New York Times made it available. There's quite literally nothing, in my opinion, in here that is... I got to be honest. A lot of it is just parking. I'm not kidding. Press parking. Parking at the Pentagon reservation is restricted to vehicles permitted. And I'm reading through this and I'm like, oh, I just really don't care. I'm not going to park there. We'll get dropped off. We'll drop our equipment off, whatever. Filming and photography and audio recording at the Pentagon is prohibited unless approved in advance. This is true for, I think, every military installation. Here's the issue. These journalists that were in the Pentagon, they were not journalists. They were Mockingbird media. The reason why they didn't have any, they could do whatever they wanted was because there was no distinction between them and the administrations they worked under. It was all a handshake agreement, and we all know. They lied to the people. They're lying about this. Basically, what they're saying right now is, this agreement forces you to say that you won't solicit information unless they approve of it. It says you won't solicit confidential, classified, or otherwise information and release it. Okay, let me just stress to everybody who's listening. You can turn in your press badge. That's it. So let's say you're at the Pentagon. You've got what's called the PFAC, the press pass that you applied for, and you stumble upon a story for which you're like, whoa, hold on. I can't believe what I'm hearing. The American people need to know this. And so here's a guy. You're like, tell me what's going on with this. Now, there are some questions. If you facilitate in any way the leaking of classified information, it's actually a crime. Journalists can receive the information, but there's questions over where the line is when they start to solicit that information. It actually becomes criminal. So in the event you find a story that is of massive, tremendous public knowledge, you already know about the story. You can ask for confirmation and details. That is not a crime. If the Pentagon has a problem with that, you can say, Mr. Hegseth, here's your press badge back. Adios. The issue at play here is they want to have their cake and eat it too. So I have a question. I mean, if there's an investigative journalist with no access to the Pentagon who works for Tate News Corp, and he's investigating the Pentagon, and then he goes to Elaad from Timcast and says, take a look at this story that I've uncovered. What's stopping Elaad from going, Mr. Secretary, we have a story that we got from Tate News Corp saying these things. They're fabricating a reason to storm out of the press, out of the Pentagon. And I think the real issue here, and I apologize for the long rant, but I think the real issue here is the media was Mockingbird. The Biden administration, the Obama administration, the media was the government. It was all part of the same manipulation. That's why they had free reign to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And now that Trump is in and they hate him and he represents a new system emerging and taking over, now the media says, quick, clear out, because it's a cult. The new organizations that come in, what do you do when you're at the Pentagon? Is it commonplace that journalists just constantly walk around the Pentagon saying, leak me information? No, it's about going to press briefings, having interviews, and getting quick access to people in government. You can ask them about stories that are in the public sphere. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you all agree, but that's my statement.
I mean, it seems like a very easy manipulation for people who don't understand the way that this aspect of government and media works, that it's a very easy story to frame for people that paints the new media, as they call it, in a specific light, while taking advantage of a layperson's understanding of how press briefings work or how media structure works. It really, if you're from an outsider looking in, it just looks like they don't like the idea of people that are outside of the club getting into the club.
Yeah, well,
that's right.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, the legacy media has an axe to grind with new media. So right off the rip, one side has a bone to pick with the other. So you're obviously going to get some ridiculous reporting. And yeah, I mean, even from the Pentagon's perspective, I mean, in the lead up to the story about the Pentagon media walkout, like every article they were running was just these leaked characterizations from unnamed Pentagon officials. There was no documents. There was no nothing. So it's like the Pentagon had holes to plug, obviously, because the media was just adversarial the entire time. So it's like they're throwing a fit and they were adversarial the entire time. It's like, get lost. Like, this is part of the reorientation towards new media, because that's just the more useful, that provides more utility for Americans, quite frankly.
In my perspective, it's a privilege, not a right, to be able to cover the White House, to be able to get into the Pentagon, to be able to ask questions at these briefings. As I understand, these journalists are used to trying to solicit information from Pentagon officials throughout the Pentagon, and they used to have the right to walk around the Pentagon building without an escort. I believe that's part of the rule change now, where they will be required to walk around with an escort and won't be able to freely try to solicit information from different Pentagon officials just throughout the building. It's fascinating, too, because the White House has these same rules. I can't la-di-da walk around any part of the White House. They have a specific area that the press is allowed into, a relatively small area. And then if you're ever trying to go anywhere extended beyond that, you have to be with somebody with your press pass present. If you're somewhere where you're not supposed to be, people will aggressively come up to you. Like random White House people will be like, you need to be escorted here, or you're not allowed to be in this area. I think this is largely in an effort, though, from Pete Hegseth to prevent leaks and, these unfavorable reporting that we are seeing on the Pentagon through disgruntled employees at the Pentagon. There are a lot of people there who aren't happy with how Pete Hegseth has been running the show over there, and they want to, they have an axe to grind, and they'll grind that axe through the media. And Hegseth is trying to prevent that from occurring.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just shows that they're politicized within. It shows that there's a contingent. The same thing happened at the DOJ when there was the purge plan of the DOJ. And then all the media did was just establish that there is an insurgent group within the DOJ that is not following orders. They're not respecting the American people, and we voted in on Trump. So
I mean, my reaction to all this is I'm sitting here being like, we used to have a small news team, but it was largely aggregation. There were a few stories that we broke when we had sources, but it was largely aggregation for the purpose of collecting stories that we thought were important and putting them in a written format, because I do videos. So I'm doing very surface level journalism every single day. When I put together like the noon show, I'm collecting a bunch of sources, fact checking, pulling in data points. And the old school media hates it for a variety of reasons. We've displaced them. We've taken away their position as this, like, they viewed themselves as a special elevated class of people above you. They had access to the ivory tower for which they could espouse their views. We destabilized that, and they got really mad at us. Now seeing all of this and the reaction, I'm like, oh, maybe we should hire a bunch of journalists and do a legit, like an actual newsroom. I mean, it's really a simple question. What is the purpose of being in the Pentagon? Do you need to be in the Pentagon to do an investigative report? The answer is no.
No, not at all.
Unless you're sneaking around, I guess.
And if you have sources, they can leak to you. You don't physically need to be in the building.
Exactly.
But I guess you don't have that moment of spontaneity where you're passing somebody in the hallway with a wink and a nod, and then you can meet them and you're like, hey, do you have any access to Grindr? Are you pissed at your, any of your subordinates? Or did your boss piss you off? Do you want to leak something stupid about them? And then, ultimately it looks bad on the way up. I think there is a serious national security risk here with having all these reporters looking for scoops running around in the Pentagon. And I think they compromise national security with a lot of these leaks, obviously beyond the reporting. But when you do have some disgruntled soldiers, I forgot the name of the specific guy, but a couple of years ago, there were massive leaks, and that was a national security issue. It wasn't the WikiLeaks guy, but the Discord leaks. There's serious consequences.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Oh, that was
There are serious consequences to this stuff, and we need to tighten things over at the Pentagon. We can't have, pissed off employees leaking or pissed off employees accidentally leaking on Discord, I guess.
Yeah, well, because it's like, okay, the Pentagon is aware that there is a portion of their staffing that is disgruntled. So if the media is coming in with the sole intent of like just finding these people, identifying who these people are, and then publicizing their messaging, like they totally have the right to clamp down on this.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
The media really does have an axe to grind in a way. Like you said, like there's an aspect now where the people who pivoted and learned to pivot to something like YouTube or Rumble, whatever it is, putting themselves in front of the camera, especially the written journalist class hated that, because the ability to write well doesn't always necessarily equate to being able to speak well on camera and being able to present media in an engaging way. This is something that's going on a lot of ways in in Hollywood as well, which is like they're trying to continue this old guard of how media is done, while YouTube and these other platforms are starting to eclipse them.
Let me explain to you guys what this is really about. I have before you User Mag, Taylor Lorenz's Substack. So she worked for like the Atlantic, the Washington Post. How many likes do you think she gets on an article on her new independent? Well, that's a little low. I was displaying the likes a moment ago. Maybe if I zoom in. Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, the likes are there. Yeah. 369. Wow. Ooh, 975. 642 likes. That's great. 20 comments. She's getting nothing.
Right.
I mean, this is nothing. You're not living off of this. The issue is that people like Taylor Lorenz, who don't have the skill, the merit, nay, the nobility to even work for any kind of, to run any kind of media business or be in, they need to be propped up by the machine.
Well, look at somebody like a House and Habit who went from like working as like basically just being a mommy blogger to being like a very, very prolific voice in aspects of politics and culture, runs a Substack that does very, very like incredible numbers. Somebody who has the ability, even if we're not talking putting yourself in front of the camera, but somebody who writes well, is engaging, knows how to put together a package of information that really, really speaks to people, will succeed on their own. Substack is a way that people are doing that on a written platform, but the people who are resistant to change in media are going to have an axe to grind with everybody. In
Well, but it's no. Go ahead.
Back on this Hegseth stuff for a moment. I think Hegseth is trying to change up a lot of the culture at the Pentagon, and it's pissing a lot of people off. It's pissing off the fat generals, the generals who believe in DEI, the generals that believe that there should be lower standards for, I don't know, minorities or women inside the service. And that's pissing off a lot of generals who end up leaking to people at like the Washington Times. And I'm taking a look at this article right now, and it says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has lost the trust and respect of some top military commanders with his public grandstanding from the speech that he gave a week or so ago, widely seen as unprofessional, and the personnel moves made by the former cable TV host leading an unprecedented and dangerous exodus of talent from the Pentagon, said current senior military officers and current and former Defense Department officials. This is what I think Hegseth is trying to prevent. More articles like these coming out. Disgruntled generals over at the Pentagon, pissed off with the needed changes that he's making to try to reinvigorate our army, to try to deal with the threats that we are seeing abroad. This is why I think he's trying to make these changes, to prevent more of the bad optics from these generals.
I think the issue for a lot of these corporate news outlets is that they're access journalists. If you guys aren't familiar,
totally.
Yes.
Yep.
This means that they're newsrooms that only exist because they've been given a credential, whereas we here often say things that piss people off, even if they're our friends, because we think truth and transparency matters, and honor, integrity too. Some of these newsrooms don't have any merit, don't have any credibility. What they have is they're friends with someone in an administration.
They have access.
Exactly. Now that they're not friends with the Trump administration, they have nothing. They barely have access. Then they say, we're going to restrict your access, and they're like, uh-oh, what are we going to write?
I mean, this is happening in entertainment too. Like Variety will go to these like red carpet premieres, and people who cover it get 10 times the views that they do because they're providing some type of interesting commentary as opposed to just going and asking inane questions to celebrities.
Well, I mean, it's beyond. This is happening with every institution in the United States, like with legacy media. All they're doing is they're just benefiting from the hard work that people like a generation or two did to establish those connections, to build the New York Times, to build the Washington Post. And they're just running off of those fumes. And this is happening with every institution in the United States because, broadly speaking, now with the internet, now we're in the digital age, it's democratized information. We are able to reorient sort of our intake of content regardless of what the medium is. I mean, we have a great example sitting right here.
You can go out
and so... Yeah, like that's all they benefit from is the hard work from people that came before them. But now that their usefulness is sort of running thin, we're going to tune into Timcast because it's just going to be better. And like you're talking about Taylor Lorenz, it's like the thing that separates House and Habit from Taylor Lorenz is House and Habit actually has like an interesting perspective. They have an interesting take versus Taylor Lorenz is just like crappier version of what you would have on the New York Times. So it's like, why would I even bother?
So, Nate, what do you think? Am I compromising my journalistic integrity? Am I suddenly a shill for the Department of War?
No, not at all.
It's okay if you think I am.
I don't think so. I mean, Oh, sorry. No, I don't think so. I think that, one thing about like legacy media that I've noticed, in the press room, I'm obviously not in the White House press room, but there's just this sense of disrespect that's kind of odd to me. Like, you should respect the office regardless of who's there. Like, there was one particular moment where Caroline Leavitt kind of dunks on Caitlin Collins when she's just like, you should just be on the ground. Why are you not on the ground? It's much easier to lie about what's happening when you're not on the ground. So like when I'm out there, you can't accuse me of lying. It's not AI. I'm on the street talking to these people. So that's a big thing that I would point out. Yeah.
There's a
Actually,
sense of
there's no
entitlement.
Nate. He's just AI. There's a guy in a green screen a green screen suit sitting there.
Yeah.
So I have a friend actually who's talking about wanting to create like a secondary channel because he goes to a lot of these events and he's like, I want to start documenting this stuff. I think it's important, but he does other work and he doesn't want to necessarily put people off his other content because it's not political, whatever. And I said, look, like there's a million people in the commentary space now. It's very, very hard to get started here, but just the act of going on the ground and getting information, boots on the ground, asking questions is invaluable. And like more people should be doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.